Vandana is actually a trained gymnast. She's had a box of chocolates named after her in America, and it's described as, not unlike Vandana, it's a complex firecracker. Chocolate, vanilla, cinnamon, and ground chili.
Thank you very much to both the Schumacher College and Transition Town Terminus for organizing this evening to be with you. And we're meeting one day after the European Commission has approved GMOs after a gap of 12 years. And in my view, both the non-decision and non-outcome of Copenhagen and the rushed decision in Brussels come from the same structure. Both are about pollution. One is about atmospheric pollution through greenhouse gases, and the other is about genetic pollution through the release of genetically engineered crops. I know the Western press talked about China as the nasty country in Copenhagen. The reality is that the United Nations treaty making was going on. So negotiators, 190 countries were sitting in this big, large, ugly Bella Center negotiating. And the negotiations hadn't broken down. They were going to have an outcome. And on the last day, President Obama flies in. The Danes had been trying to get an accord through. They hadn't. Every time they tried, there was a rebellion saying this has not been negotiated. You know, you can't replace 190 countries' negotiation with one country putting something as a finalized agreement on the table. But President Obama came and then, got into actually gate crashed into a room where China, India, South Africa, and Brazil were working out issues and literally bullied them into signing the so-called accord with a lot of debate. And that's where China stood strong and said, this is not what we are here for. We are here for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, not your private accord. The interesting thing is, even the few changes that were agreed and to which 26 countries signed, including the 5 in that room, United States and the 4 BRIC countries as they're called, even that draft has been changed. And it's reached a stage where India has had to say, we are not signing. India, which was a signatory in Copenhagen, has had to say from New Delhi, but what you're sending around is not what we agreed to. So in effect, there are no signatories. The other thing President Obama did was he held a press conference. And in the negotiating rooms where this closed-circuit TV was showing, the negotiators, which, including heads of state from the rest of the world, are seeing on the TV President Obama standing on a podium like this announcing we've reached an accord. Negotiators say, but we are here to reach an agreement. Where did this accord come from? And at the end of it, Copenhagen just burst asunder. Because countries that had been left out but were negotiating said, but we don't agree to this. So that's how there was a zero outcome. There would have been a legally binding outcome. President Obama had announced in Hong Kong, I think it was, that Copenhagen would not have a legally binding outcome, only a political declaration. So there was an intention to undo the global treaty that the world had signed in 1992. Now, when it comes to pollution, declarations don't matter, regulations matter. And the 2 principles that Rio put in place, 2 important principles. The first is the polluter must pay. And the second is the precautionary principle. Now, in the case of climate change, the issue of precaution is we might not know for certain exactly how the climate is being destabilized. But there's enough indications to show, both in terms of the new catastrophic events we are seeing, the southern European storms just 2 days ago, the extended drought in India in 2009, the cyclones that hit every year somewhere with velocities that are unprecedented. We've seen not only a deregulation, that the international treaty is broken down, but we are seeing now an assault on the scientific body, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and then making it look like something horrendous had happened. As you heard, I'm a physicist. Tell me of any scientific paper, whether it's in biology or in physics or in chemistry or anything, which shows dots, every dot of a research output connected. No, they make a line that's an average that covers a trend. So that's what the scientists of East Anglia were doing. They were trying to make the line that would be the explanatory line, and it's being made to look like they cheated. That's how science works. You find a trend, and of course your trend is shaped by the theory within which you're working, the paradigm within which you're working. I've just finished a 2-year study on the climate change in the Himalaya. This morning I screened in the course the film we've made on what's happening to Ladakh. The desert is getting floods, and the wet zones where I come from, where the Ganges starts, isn't getting any rain. That is what we're talking about, total climate chaos. Last year, we didn't have a monsoon, and after the monsoon should have been over, the dry areas of the Deccan got so much rain that areas which have never had rain had floods. So floods in deserts, snow in summertime, cyclones like you've never known. These are the extreme events that are coming from climate instability. And I think what we should be talking about is really climate chaos and climate instability. No one can deny that the atmosphere has been absolutely polluted. And no matter what, the scientific evidence of the links of this with the instability of the climate, I'm among those who believes any kind of pollution is wrong. So the impact is a second step. The pollution is the first step. And I think that's where we need to bring the discussion. So while the whole climate chaos has been turned into political chaos of the worst kind, we also now have chaos around genetic engineering. In Europe, you've had 51 regions joined together as GMO-free regions. These are governments. They have legal rights. They have sovereignty. And they've passed laws to say we'll never allow GMOs. This potato is called amphora. And you'd think it's something beautiful, something related to flora. This potato is really a Trojan horse, because Europeans have said no to GM foods. So they thought they'd get a GM that's not a food. So this potato is not for eating. It's an industrial potato. It's supposed to make paper, it's supposed to go into the textile industry, it's supposed to produce industrial starch. But the more serious aspect of this potato is that it uses what are called antibiotic resistance markers. Because the technology is so crude, and because the technology is so inaccurate, they have to add what are called antibiotic resistance markers. Now, what these antibiotic resistance markers do is, after the transformation, after the genetic engineering, the cells are put into a dish with antibiotic. And the cells that died did not absorb the new gene, and the cells that survived absorbed it because they have the antibiotic resistance in them. So its only use is to make a sloppy technology work. We already have huge antibiotic resistance. If we start eating food that has antibiotic resistance markers, there is a chance, and all the literature shows that there's a chance that the DNA from that food could be picked up by the bacteria in our gut and transmit antibiotic resistance. The science has been totally corrupted when corporations start to dictate what will be counted as science. When the climate skeptics start to attack IPCC, they don't just attack 2 points. Now they start attacking the entire evidence.